Have you ever wondered why, even in our secular culture today, we still consider sex to be something sacred? Now, you may hear me say that and go, really? Seriously? Here we are in a secular culture like the UK, like Europe, like North America. Surely we have disconnected sex from religion. And that's a good thing, right? Because religion was restrictive and it tried to tell you who you could sleep with and when. And now we live in this age where you can have sex with who you want, when you want, however you want. Surely we're totally liberated. What has sex got to do with religion? How is sex possibly sacred? Well, I put it to you, actually, I think the opposite is true. In the culture we live in today, almost anything goes, but the one thing that ends up with you being considered beyond the pale is if you break the consent barrier, if you force yourself sexually upon somebody else, don't get permission for the sexual acts that you want to engage with them, then you are considered to be the most monstrous of moral monsters. Look at the way that we treat someone like a Harvey Weinstein. Look at the huge scandal around Prince Andrew and others who've got caught up in sexual impropriety. We consider sex to be absolutely sacred, that we've surrounded it with that barrier of consent. Furthermore, we still have rape on the statute book. If you punch somebody in the face, you'll be convicted for assault. But if you force yourself sexually on somebody, that we treat separately. We consider that to be rape, we consider that to be sexual assault. It's a much more serious offence. But why is it? Because again, I would say to you instinctively, we recognise that sex is one of the most precious things that we have. And if you violate that sacred space, then we treat you as a monster accordingly. Well, where does the idea that sex is sacred come from? After all, if we are nothing more than highly evolved primates, then why does it matter how people behave sexually? As long as our DNA gets passed on to the next generation, who cares quite what goes on? Well, again, most of us would hear that idea and consider it to be absolutely heinous, that actually, again, we realise that sex is something special. And I would suggest that comes actually, surprisingly, right out of the Bible. You see, contrary to many popular myths out there, the Bible is not anti-sex. The Bible talks a lot about sex. In fact, in the very first book of the Bible, the book of Genesis, you only have to get about 3 pages in before God tells Adam and Eve, the first human couple, to go and enjoy sexual intimacy and to procreate and to populate and to fill the earth. The Song of Songs, one of the books in the middle of the Bible, is this amazingly beautiful love poem from a husband to his wife that is quite direct in some of the imagery that it uses. Nowhere does the Bible ever look down on sex. It says that sex has a place and a context, but considers it to be one of God's good gifts to us. But the Bible goes much further. It doesn't just say that sex is for pleasure. It doesn't just say sex is for procreation and the raising and the generation of children, but also the Bible goes one step further and says that the main reason that God created sex was to be a metaphor, an image, a little picture of what the relationship between human beings and God is supposed to be like. The reason the Bible says that we are drawn to and we yearn for intimacy is ultimately we are created for intimacy with God himself, and marriage and sexuality is a little picture of that. And the good news about that is that actually, as I look around this sex-saturated age we live in some ways it's ironic that we think of ourselves as sexually liberated, but actually we are in an age that has a very complicated relationship with sex. Less and less people are having sex. That statistic has been shown. You have a huge number of people who are single and don't have a sexual partner. And if we are saying, as our culture does, that the greatest thing you can do is to sleep with somebody, then what are we saying to those who don't have someone to engage in sexual intimacy with? We're saying that actually you've missed the whole purpose of life. But if the biblical story is true, that sex is just a pointer to the much bigger picture, the fact that we are created for intimacy with the God who made us and loves us, the great thing about that is a story we are all invited into. Whether you are single or in a relationship, whether you are gay or straight, or no matter what you are, no matter where you are in this great sexually messed up world that we find ourselves in, the reality is that God still loves you so much that he sent Jesus to die for you, that you might have that ability to be adopted into his family and enjoy the much greater intimacy with a relationship with Christ, to which sex is just a shadow and a pointer.